G'day y'all. It's finally time. I've been waiting for this day for, when did I order this? Many long days. Every minute that went by was painful waiting for Lattafa Eclaire to arrive. Australia did get this fragrance a little bit later than a lot of places in the world, namely the US. I know you guys have been commenting on my videos and I've been trying to avoid any talk about this fragrance because I don't like to be influenced by what anyone says about this fragrance and just rely on my own thoughts. So I don't have to avoid spoilers anymore after this. I have seen a lot of people say that this is a closer dupe to Giardini di Toscana's Bianco Latte than Caramel Cascade by Paris Corner. Now, I did a first impression and a follow-up on Paris Corner's Taskeen Caramel Cascade. I'll link the video somewhere. Obviously, after that first impression, I did decant it a few times, so I got to smell it again, test it later on after it's been exposed to oxygen. I don't know how I'm going to do this today. I think it depends on how I feel about this fragrance after opening it. Let's just smell it and see what we think. Major disclaimer alert, because I know I'm going to get comments about this. This is a first impression. This is not my final judgment on the fragrance. As with some Middle Eastern fragrances, they can change with time after exposure to oxygen. I like to call it maturation and aging. A lot of people call it maceration. But I will say that in my experience, not all scents change enough for me to largely change my mind on a scent. Some surprise me after a good 3 to 6 months. Some can really surprise me, mainly increased performance in longevity and projection. That's normally where I see the biggest change in a fragrance. There are cases where I see a Middle Eastern fragrance either deepen, maybe it warms up, it becomes less screechy. So I'm not saying that this is going to happen one way or the other. I'm just saying that I know that time can help after exposure to oxygen. This is just a first impression. I usually do updates down the line. I'll update you regularly. Usually in my end of the month videos, I'll retouch on fragrances I spoke about in that month. 2, 3, 4 months down the line, I'll even touch on fragrances again and do an update. This is just my first impression, smelling it out of the box. Okay, now that I have that disclaimer out of the way, let's open it. And also for reference, this package date on here is May 2024. So obviously it's mid-June now, so it's pretty fresh juice. First of all, love the box, love the aesthetic. Okay, you know what? Thank you for just doing the cardboard. It makes it easier for me to recycle. We don't need all the glitz and glam. Save that for the PR that goes to the big influencers, okay? We don't need that. All right, here is the bottle. Is this helpful B-roll? I don't know. Okay, before I go ahead and spray this, I want to talk about notes. So in Lattafa Eclaire, they claim to have notes of caramel, silk, and sugar in the top. In the heart, it's got white flowers and honey. And in the dry down, vanilla, praline, and musk. Now, if we're contrasting that with something like Taskeen Caramel Cascade by Paris Corner does not claim to have any florals, or at least any listed florals. Lattafa Eclaire also has sugar in the top. It also has praline in the base, which adds sweetness as well. So it seems as if there's a few more sweetening notes, still have the honey, and instead of the tonka bean, we've switched it out for white florals. Now, if we compare Eclaire's notes to Bianco Latte, still seems to be a lot more sweetening notes. It has that sugar in the top, whereas Bianco Latte just claims to have caramel. And again, it has that praline in the base to add more sweetness. And it doesn't have tonka bean. I would predict that this is a little bit softer with those white florals. Not as spicy. It's still got honey in there. Let's spray this. I'm actually going to end up just spraying this directly on skin. I'm going to spray it on one side because I don't know if I want to compare it to Bianco Latte. Okay, first I'm going to clear the atomizer. I'm just going to spray into this box. Okay, it's interesting. There still is a little bit of a spice. It's definitely sweeter. There's less of a spice than something like Caramel Cascade, for instance. It doesn't have that tonka bean, which can add a little bit of a bite. Okay, I know it's not necessarily fair, but I'm gonna spray Bianco Latte. I'm just gonna spray on a tester here. There's definitely still a spice in here, but it's a bit more warm. I think it's a warmer spice. It's not as sterile of a spice, if that makes sense. It's a little bit softer. The honey is not super prominent, which I also really appreciate. I'm not someone that's loving super strong honey notes in fragrance. I feel like either the honey note is very good in here or it's just not super strong. Very milky, very creamy. You've got that caramel and milk. Very, very sweet. I can definitely see where the added sweetness is hitting here. here. It is so easy to go nose blind with this one, you guys. Now that I smell, just smelling caramel Cascade in the bottle here, more than ever, it smells like root beer. Perhaps it is the heavy tonka bean. Perhaps there's a note that's not listed, but now when I smell caramel Cascade, it smells like root beer. Very odd, not necessarily bad, but if you're wanting a dupe of Bianco Latte, I don't think you're gonna get it from caramel Cascade. It's still okay, just not a dupe. I'm gonna spray Bianco Latte on the skin. Yeah, it's still spicier. It's interesting. Bianco Latte is still spicier. It's just that, I think it's just that tonka bean. It just adds that element of subtle spice, adds a little bit of a bite. And because of that, I think it actually takes away from its gourmand nature. I think just based on initial spray, I think Eclaire actually wins out on the gourmand level. I think a lot of that's probably gonna be taking away the tonka bean and adding in some extra sweet notes. I am finding Lattafa Eclaire to be sweeter, milkier. That caramel is softer. It is a little bit powdery. I think it's very beautiful. It still has a little bit of a spice, tiny bit of a spicy warmth. I think it's actually the honey in there, but the honey's not overpowering. I really appreciate that. I much more enjoy the honey in Lattafa Eclaire versus something like teriyaki. The honey in teriyaki is just not one that I enjoy, unfortunately. So I think if you're after something that's very gourmand, very soft, creamy, milky, luscious caramel note, I think this is a good one. I've just opened this box based on initial spray. Comparing it to Bianco Latte just has that extra element of spice and depth from the tonka bean. But listen, if you just want a gourmand, sweet gourmand, milky caramel bomb, this is a good one. I'm actually going to step away for a bit. I'm going to let this one wear on the skin. I actually might spray it up here as well. This is not necessarily a direct comparison to Bianco Latte. This is not going to be a fair comparison. So I'm going to go ahead and spray this. Okay, I'm going to wear this throughout the day. Maybe I'll come back in like an hour or two and I'll update you guys on how I feel.
A few moments later.
All right, y'all, I am back. It's been like a couple of hours or so. I am thoroughly impressed with Lattafa Eclaire. Obviously, you know, I sprayed Bianco Latte on my right arm here, and while I wasn't meaning really to do a head-to-head comparison with these, I'm kind of glad that I did spray Bianco Latte because they smell so similar. Now that it's dried down, the sweetness in Eclaire has died down quite a bit, and there still is like a soft, warm, fuzzy spiciness that is coming from the dry down of Eclaire, and it really well matches Bianco Latte's really soft, cozy spiciness. Obviously, before I left, I sprayed it all over here, I sprayed it behind my neck, and I was just getting wafts of like real creamy, powdery caramel, and it was very warm. I just felt very luscious. I feel like a snack. I feel like a walking snack. Honestly, Caramel Cascade, canceled. Not really canceled. I wouldn't go to Taskeen looking for a dupe of Bianco Latte. If you like a really strong, God, I swear it smells like there's some other spice in Taskeen, like anise or something. Like it smells like root beer that there just isn't in Eclaire and Bianco Latte. I just don't get that same root beer. Eclaire is a much closer dupe. I had Mr. Zuri smell them both as well, just because I like to do that. I like to test his nose a little bit. And while he's not a huge fan of these scent profiles, he could not really tell much of a difference. I mean, he smelled both arms and he was like, they smell the same to me. I would predict if there are any changes to Eclaire, it would probably be in longevity. Maybe the vanilla will warm up a little bit over time. But honestly, out the box, I'm very impressed with this one. I'm very happy. I feel pretty good just wearing this now. If you are looking for a dupe of Bianco Latte, I would say very good dupe, smells very similar. It is much sweeter on the initial spray, but I'm finding that on the dry down, the sweetness dies out quite a bit and you're left with something incredibly similar to Bianco Latte that honestly, a layman just walking by, I don't think would ever tell. It's the scent bubble that it creates that's very creamy and milky. It's got that little bit of powderiness from the caramel. Very beautiful, warm, soft, a little fuzzy, gourmand. Delicious. Lattafa killed it with this one. For those of you in Australia, I will be adding this one to my Decant shop right after I export this footage. I will be taking photos and adding it right away, along with Rave Now Women by Lattafa. I'll add a couple other ones on there as well, but I am honestly relieved. I was really scared I wasn't going to be impressed with this, but I am very impressed with this one. So I don't have to say anything really bad about it. I think I can sleep nicely tonight. I'm very picky. I'm a hater ass bitch. I dislike a lot of fragrances, and I'm happy that I like this one. Thank you guys so much for watching. Thank you for being patient and waiting until I receive Lattafa Eclaire. Does anyone even care about this fragrance anymore? It's been like weeks now since it's been out. So, all right, thank you so much for watching, and you'll see me in the next one.